Boston Massacre. No more taxation without representation. The colonists repeated this over and over. They hoped the British Parliament, the British government, would listen to them. Parliament kept making laws and charging taxes without talking to the colonists first. The colonists did not think this was fair. No taxation without representation. The illustration shows the Tea Act when it was passed in the Parliament. In June 1767, Parliament created a law called the Townshend Acts. The act created new taxes on glass, paint, oil, lead, paper, and tea. The French and Indian War had been expensive. Parliament needed money to pay for it all. They thought they could get the money by taxing the colonists. The British thought this was fair because they had been protecting the colonists from the French during the war. The illustration shows the Townshend Acts, which are tax colonists on items imported from Great Britain. These are some examples: tea, glass, and paint. The colonists were already very mad at Parliament about the Sugar and Stamp Acts. The Townshend Acts made them even madder. They did not like being told what to do. So, the colonists boycotted British goods. They only bought goods made in the colonies. They would not buy any British goods. The illustration on the left side shows the colonists protesting. They're holding banners: No Sugar Act, No Tea Act, No Stamp Act. The illustration on the right shows the colonists reading the news about the Townshend Acts. In 1768, several merchants or sellers in Boston decided to work together. They agreed not to import certain British goods at all. Merchants in other cities joined the boycott during the next year. British imports had been cut in half by the end of 1769. No to all British goods. Some of the colonists' protests became violent. Colonists refused to pay British customs workers when they came to collect taxes. When Parliament heard about this, they sent more troops to the colonies in March of 1770. This made the colonists even madder. The illustration shows the King of Britain sending more British soldiers, his soldiers, to the colonies. There you can see the soldiers and the colonists here watching them. On March 5th, a British soldier and a few colonists got into a fight outside of the customs house on King Street. Several colonists heard the argument going on and joined the fight. They threw sticks and snowballs at the British soldier. The soldier's name was Hugh White. On the left side, you see the meaning of customs house. I means the U there. Is the office at a port or frontier where customs duty, which are taxes for import and export goods, is collected. On the right side, you can see the view of the old State House in Boston, Massachusetts, the seat of British colonial government from 1713 to 1776. So the Boston Massacre took place well in front of that balcony you see there. Private White called for help. British Captain Thomas Preston heard Private White's call for help. Captain Preston sent more soldiers to Customs House to try to calm everyone down. However, colonists got even angrier when more soldiers arrived. Here you can see the different uniforms or costumes that they had. This is the one that a private would wear. Then you have the officer, then what a sergeant would wear, and later a private in 1835, which was after the American Revolutions, but just so you can compare the uniforms. One colonist threw a chunk of ice at British Private Hugh Montgomery. The chunk knocked Montgomery to the ground. Private Montgomery accidentally fired his gun as he was falling. This scared several of the other British soldiers, so they fired their guns too. 3 colonists dropped dead. 2 more were hurt and died a couple of days later. The British soldiers and several townspeople were thrown in jail until right away. The case would have to go to court. Here it's British Private Hugh just before the fight. And here you have to, on the right side, when they're actually starting fire. And you can see some of the colonists dead already on the ground. The colonists and the British blamed each other for the fight. British Captain Preston wrote down his side of the story from jail. American patriots also wrote their sides of the story. They said that the British had planned the event all along. American Paul Revere created a picture that made the event look like a bloody massacre. A massacre is a violent killing of a large number of people. Revere passed his picture around Boston. So on the right side, you can see Paul Revere's illustration that he drew of the Boston Massacre. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened on March 5th, 1770. The British said that dangerous objects were thrown at them and they acted in self-defense. The Patriots say the British had weapons and opened fire on innocent people. Here you can see another illustration. Take a look at it. On November 27, 1770, the Boston Massacre case went to court. It was heard in the Queen Street courthouse. Americans were still very angry about the deaths. Captain Preston, 24, and the British soldiers did have one thing going for them. This 24, I don't know why it's there. Disregard. American lawyer John Adams was going to defend them in court. Adams, who would later become the second president of the United States, wanted to protect justice in the colonies. So he decided to defend the British soldiers. He thought they should have a fair trial. After many days in court, the British soldiers were found not guilty. The court decided that they had not planned to kill the colonists. Adams argued that the British only fought back out of self-defense. 2 of the soldiers were found guilty of shooting the colonists out of self-defense. These 2 men did not receive the death penalty, but they were branded or burned on their thumbs. That's a sketch of the Boston Massacre trial. No matter who is to blame, the Boston Massacre started out as a small fight that turned into a major problem. 5 Bostonians were killed in the fight. This is why the Patriots called the event the Boston Massacre. The colonists thought the deaths were another example of poor treatment by the British. This event added to the colonists' anger towards the British rule. The illustration on the left says, "I am a colonist and I am so mad with the British." The illustration on the right shows a snowball, right? That it's getting bigger and bigger. And it says, "The massacre was like a snowfall effect, something that started small but became larger." Once again, the British had tried to control the colonists, and the colonists had fought back. The so-called Boston Massacre was one of the most important events that led up to the American Revolution several years later. And here is King George III, and he's saying, "I am King George, and the colonists are fighting back. This is getting bad." All right, students, I'm sure you like this.